Every time list season rolls around in the NFL, somebody gets snubbed. It comes with the territory. But every once in a while a list appears that's so disrespectful, so detached from reality, that it makes an entire fan base's blood boil with outrage, my friend. And that's exactly what happened this week in Philadelphia. A ranking of the best wide receivers in the league was released, built from the opinions of people who work inside the NFL. And the result placed a Super Bowl champion, one of the most consistent receivers of the last decade, below players who don't come anywhere close to his resume. It's the kind of slap in the face this city won't forget anytime soon. If you're a diehard Eagles fan, hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel, because today I'm going to show you, with the numbers right in front of you, the size of the injustice they did to one of the biggest players on this roster. And more than that, why this lack of respect might be exactly the fuel that turns his next season into something historic. Get ready, because when you see who they're comparing this guy to, you won't believe it. Let me set the scene. ESPN released its annual ranking of the 10 best wide receivers in the NFL, the one built from a survey of executives, coaches, and scouts from all over the league. At the top, no surprise, Jamar Chase, who took 70% of the first-place votes, followed by Justin Jefferson. So far, so good. The problem is where a certain Philadelphia player ended up. Or rather, where he didn't end up. He didn't show up in the top 10. He didn't show up in the top 15. And, depending on the voting, he was left out of the top 20 entirely, tossed down into the others receiving votes category. The name of this player treated like a supporting act is Devonta Smith. And to give you a sense of just how deep they buried this player, it's worth looking at the others receiving votes list itself. Smith not only got left out of the top 10, he even showed up behind several names on that secondary list, including Alec Pierce himself, who was mentioned ahead of him. And notice the glaring irony. We're talking about a player who, last season, led the Eagles in receiving yards, with 1,008 total yards. It was the first time he finished as the team's receiving leader since A.J. Brown arrived in Philadelphia back in 2022. In other words, even with Brown on the field all year, it was Smith who led the way in the end. And then you open a list of the best in the league and find that same player squeezed in behind a deep threat who's recovering from surgery. It's enough to turn any fan's stomach. And here is where it goes from injustice to a tasteless joke. Because it's not just the low ranking that bothers people. It's who ended up ahead of him. Devonta Smith was ranked below names like Zay Flowers of the Ravens and Alec Pierce of the Colts. Let me repeat that for you to process. Alec Pierce, ahead of Devonta Smith. If you follow football for real, you already understand the absurdity. But for those who don't, let me explain exactly why this comparison is offensive. Let's talk about Alec Pierce first. He's a useful player. Nobody here is trying to diminish his career. But he's essentially a specialist in deep balls, a single-function player. Last season, he recorded only 47 receptions the entire year. 47. It's true that he leads the league in yards per reception average, because his role is precisely to catch few balls, but way downfield. He's a specialized hammer, not a complete toolbox. And on top of that, he's recovering from ankle surgery he had in the offseason. In other words, the league's experts put a single-function deep threat, with 47 receptions and coming off surgery, ahead of a complete receiver, an absolute starter, who does absolutely everything on the field. Can you already feel the size of the disrespect? And the Zay Flowers case isn't much different. He's a talented player, fast, good after the catch, but the numbers show a clear limitation. Last season, only half of his receptions resulted in 10 yards or more, which placed him down in 45th position among 100 receivers and tight ends analyzed. In other words, we're talking about good players, but with obvious holes in their game, being placed above a guy who has been a benchmark of consistency for 5 years. It doesn't add up. It makes no sense at all. Now let me show you the resume of the player they treated with such disregard, and you'll see why the fan base is right to be furious. Devonta Smith has 3 1,000-yard receiving seasons in his first 5 years in the league. 3. That places him tied for the second most 1,000-yard seasons in the entire history of the Eagles franchise. But there's more, and this stat is jaw-dropping. His 5,019 receiving yards are the most of any player in Eagles history over their first 5 years in the league. No legendary receiver who came through Philadelphia started as well as he did. He is literally sitting on several franchise receiving records he's about to break in his 6th season. And the detail that buries any argument against him is this. Over a recent stretch, among all players in the NFL, Smith ranks 11th in receiving yards, 13th in receptions, and 14th in receiving touchdowns. Top 15 numbers in the league in every category that matters. And he achieved all of that without even being the offense's first option. He did it living in the shadow of another star, sharing the ball, taking the leftovers of the defensive attention. Imagine what this guy does when the entire offense is designed around him. And there are still people in the league who put him behind a 47 reception player. So why does all this disrespect exist? The answer has to do with his style. Devonta Smith was never the loud guy, never the one to complain, never the one to fight for the spotlight. He's slim. He plays in an elegant, almost silent way. And because of that, he's been underestimated since his college days, when they said he was too small to make it, right before he won the Heisman Trophy and shut everybody up. It's a pattern that repeats his whole life. People look at him, don't see the physical explosiveness of a monster, and out of laziness end up putting him in a good but not elite box. The numbers scream one thing, the lazy eyes see another. And it doesn't stop there. While the league's voters hesitate to recognize him, the very outlets that cover the Eagles day to day are already pointing to number 6 as one of the top candidates for a first-time Pro Bowl selection this season. Think about the absurd contradiction. On one side, a survey that barely sees the guy among the best. On the other, analysts who follow his every play saying he's about to have his breakout, career-defining year. That disconnect between what the numbers show and what the labels insist on saying is exactly what defines, at its core, an underrated player. And few cases in today's NFL are as blatant as Devonta Smith's. Now, to be fair and transparent, because this part matters, there is a logical explanation for the voters' caution, even if it doesn't justify the exaggeration. Over the past few years, Smith was always technically the second receiver, behind A.J. Brown. And, for a lot of people who work in the league, he still has to prove he can carry the weight of being the main man, the guy who draws the heaviest coverage every Sunday, the number one target the opposing defense plans all week to stop. It's a legitimate doubt. Nobody knows with 100% certainty how a player reacts when all the pressure falls on his shoulders. Add to that the arrival of first-time offensive coordinator Sean Mannion, and a new scheme that hasn't been tested in a real game yet. These are real unknowns that help explain why some voters preferred to wait and see before crowning Smith. But that's exactly why this 2026 season is shaping up to be the most important of his career. For the first time since his rookie year, Smith is going to be the true number one receiver, the guy the offense leans on. And he arrives at this moment with the strongest resume of his life, a pile of franchise records knocking at the door, and now an extra motivation stamped on his forehead. The entire league just said, in writing, that it doesn't fully believe in him. If there's one thing this player's history teaches, it's that underestimating him tends to be a very costly mistake. Every time they put him in a box, he broke the box with his play, without saying much of anything. And look at the message this leaves for the fans. Don't let a list made in the middle of July, before the ball has even been snapped, define what this player is. Lists are snapshots of the past and guesses about the future. What really matters is going to be decided on the field, Sunday after Sunday, starting in September. And if these executives, coaches, and scouts are wrong, and history strongly suggests they are, Devonta Smith is going to have the perfect chance to turn all this disrespect into one of the most memorable seasons an Eagles receiver has ever had. His silence has always spoken through numbers, and the numbers have never lied. So I want to know your opinion. Do you agree that putting Devonta Smith behind players like Alec Pierce and Zay Flowers is one of the biggest injustices of this list season? Or do you think the voters are right to wait and see whether he can handle the role of the main man before placing him among the best? And going further, how many yards do you bet Smith puts up this season as the Eagles' #1 receiver? Leave it in the comments. I really want to read what you think. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back later to update you with the latest Eagles news.